Well, welcome everybody. It is 12 o'clock on Tuesday, April 7th. We're going to get started, and I'm just so glad to be here today with all of you. I'm Charlene Margot, the founder and director of the Parent Education Series in the Sequoia Union High School District. I wish again I could see all of your faces out in the auditorium, but we know that will happen again someday, hopefully soon. We hope that you're doing well, you and your families are staying healthy and sheltering in place. But again, we are very excited to have this be our inaugural Parent Education Series webinar event. So the Parent Education Webinar Series. And we chose this topic because we think nothing could be more important than resilience during the era of COVID-19. So we're very grateful to have Adina Glickman with us, who's an expert on this topic. And we know that you will enjoy everything that she has to say today. So again, welcome. We are always grateful for the support of the Sequoia Union High School District and the Sequoia Healthcare District. Their sponsorship makes this program possible, and they support videography for this event, which is even more important now than ever. We added a number of users this month with 721 views and almost 8,000 viewing minutes. So we know that you parents are enjoying the videos. This one will be recorded along with a Q&A, and you can access it at a later date for your friends or spouses or anybody who would like to see it. Okay, let's get started. Adina Glickman is the former founding director of the Stanford Resilience Project, where she directed Stanford's learning strategy programs. She is co-founder of the Academic Resilience Consortium and the author of a training manual for academic skills based on her model, the Resilient Learner. Adina is an educational consultant, and she maintains a private coaching practice in the Bay Area. So again, since this is a new format, what we're going to do today is have Adina speak with us for about 30 minutes. She has slides, so for any of you who are new to Zoom, you will see her slides on your screen with her image to the right. And then after about 30 minutes, we're going to open up the program to Q&A from you, our participants. At the bottom of your screen, if you scroll to the bottom, Zoom will show you a stream of items that you can choose from. One is Q&A. So if you have a question, please type it in there in the Q&A box. I will be reviewing those questions and then answering them of Adina at the end of this program. So without any more ado, take it away, Adina.
Well, thank you so much, Charlene, and thank you for giving me this brief snapshot of your time. I know that this is an incredibly overwhelming time in many ways, and I really, I give you props for taking an hour, taking 45 minutes to open yourself up to hearing some things that hopefully will reassure and comfort you and maybe teach you some things. I'm gonna go ahead and share my screen so we can start the slideshow. So thank you for that lovely introduction, Charlene. So yeah, I was at Stanford for almost 20 years, and I worked primarily in helping students learn how to learn and be effective learners and satisfied learners. And I think what I mean by satisfying is more than just getting an A, which is a great thing, but doesn't last a lifetime. The things that last a lifetime are really having your mind stimulated and gaining a sense of mastery and feeling like you have some purpose in the world. So I was working with these incredibly bright students, and they would come in pretty demoralized when things didn't go perfectly. They would get a B or a C or even fail an exam or a class, or get feedback that they weren't the literary kings and queens that they thought they were. And really, every time that a student would come in and talk about what had not gone well, we were really talking about resilience. And so what I started to understand about learning is that it's really about observing your own work, observing what goes well, observing what doesn't go well, and becoming a more resilient learner. So that's what I'm going to be talking with you about today. So as Charlene mentioned, I started something called the Stanford Resilience Project with a bunch of like-minded folks at Stanford, and it actually, its purpose was to try and normalize the fact of failure in this rigorous environment. But it really kind of became a touchstone for educators around the world. Since then, we've started something called the Academic Resilience Consortium, which is now an international collective of about 600 members from about 17 countries. And we're all about trying to connect schools with one another to try and create and sustain resources that promote student resilience. The most important thing for you to know about me is that I have a son. This is him. He graduated from Sequoia 4 years ago. And this is about the only way I'm going to get to honor his graduation this year. He's in Boston. He was supposed to graduate. He is graduating with a degree in classical guitar performance. And, you know, while I'm supposed to be asking the question, like, what am I going to wear to my son's college graduation, I'm actually asking much more basic questions like, when is this going to end, and what's safe, and am I doing all the right things, and what are my priorities, and what really matters, and what is the new normal, and is it okay to have fun while people are unhealthy and dying and grieving, and did I wipe down the doorknobs okay? And these are all the things that I think we're all thinking about, in addition to try and maintain our own sense of normal. So we're all asking this right now, and if you are, you're in good company with all the rest of the people on this webinar. Back in February, this is what school was. You know, this is our beloved Sequoia High School, and now this is what school is. The inside of most people's messy living rooms, if you have the blessing of having a living room that size. I want to take a minute to make a distinction between school at home, which is what our students are encountering now, what you're encountering now, versus homeschooling. I'm sure you've heard the term, but homeschooling is really where the parents are the educators, and you get to design the structure and set the pace of how the education is going to be delivered and executed. And there's usually a lot of projects, and can be an extension of your life. And most homeschooling parents are homeschooling almost full-time, if not entirely full-time. So if you're working, it's difficult to be homeschooling. So right now what's happening is school at home, which means the curriculum is still being delivered by the school, the structure and the requirements and the expectations are still being delivered by the school. And you actually and your student have fairly little to say about how it goes. A lot of parents are making requests of the schools and trying to get them to be more structured or less structured, or give more work or less work. One thing I want you to keep in mind, I've actually spoken with several high school teachers, particularly the ones who are at private schools, are worried about losing their jobs right now. And so they are trying to step up with providing even more structure and more material to students to demonstrate their efficacy as teachers. So there's a lot of pressure from a lot of different sides. I would imagine your kids are coming, you know, they're feeling inundated by a lot of work that they don't know how to handle. I'm hoping that talking today will give you some tips on how to help them and how to help yourselves. So here you are schooling at home. And this is probably on a good day what it feels like, if you're handling it all well, but I think probably for most people it feels more like this. Every day you wake up, you try again, and it just feels like it falls apart over and over again. And probably you're used to, if not wanting to, be able to give your family this kind of quality. You're probably ending up more with burnt toast. You know, we're all making compromises that we didn't expect to make, and really trying to create a new set of standards for what constitutes a good and productive life. For about 3 weeks, the New York Times published this essay, Be More Productive in 7 Days. And every time I saw that, when I would tune into the news online, I would just think, oh, I'm not doing enough. And finally, they published this one about a week ago, and that was a great relief to me because I feel like I'm struggling personally between being productive and being expansive and doing it all well and wanting to crawl into a hole and just say, please stop. When is this all going to be over? And I'm doing the best I can. So I want to sort of bring you to the idea that we're all doing the best that we can. This is something called Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And it's really about what we do as humans in our lives. And right now, we are all in safe air, healthy water, clean food, clean shelter. We're sleeping. We're trying to, wash our clothes. And also to some degree, personal security, employment is a big struggle. So we are way at the bottom of the hierarchy needs. Education is at the top. So while we really want to maintain normalcy and forward motion for our kids to continue to be educated and keep a pace with what the plan was for them in whatever year they're in school, we're really not able to do that as consistently. So I think the expectations that you should have of yourselves and of your kids should really be mitigated by where we in fact are. I was about to say keep a pace with other students. All students, every single student on this planet is in the same situation. And we don't know yet how it's gonna be regarded as we move out of it. So bottom line, give yourself a break. And if you're focusing on physiological needs and safety needs, that's where you should be. So this is a time certainly where we are trying to be as resilient as possible. We're wanting our government and our health and our kids and our schools to be as resilient as possible. And I thought I'd start by just sort of talking about what is resilience. In 1959, actually, it was defined as the act or power of springing back to a former position or shape. Elasticity, the quantity of work given back by a body that is compressed to a certain limit and then allowed to freely recover its former size or shape. It's a very physicsy description. Now, in 2019, you can't see that entirely, Merriam-Webster says it's an ability to recover from or adjust easily to misfortune or change. And dictionary.com says it's the capacity to recover quickly from difficulties. So I think it's really interesting that in 50 years, we went from sort of understanding resilience as something that's about responding to pressure and coming back to regular to something that happens easily and quickly. I personally think that that goes with the influx of computer speed processing. We're now sort of thinking we need to calibrate ourselves to the way computers process information, and we're not computers, we're people. And so I think quickly and easily is a tall order. So the other thing I want to distinguish, is resilience versus grit or toughness. Grit and toughness for me sort of look like a scowly face where you're pushing hard. I think that grit and toughness are part of resilience, but not all of it. I also want to distinguish here between perseverance and persistence and resilience, where you really are working hard at doing something and you keep at it, you're tenacious, but it's not necessarily about responding to the environment. So resilience is really contextual. This ball can't bounce without a hard surface to bounce against. It's really about the context. If that hard surface were a mattress, the ball would not bounce. It's also, as I said earlier, really about learning. It's not just about coming back to regular. It's coming back to a place where you've learned something and adjusted and adapted, and something has taken on new meaning, or you have some new capacity that you didn't have prior to the setback that produced the bounce. So my definition is really that resilience is about context and learning. So it's the ability to contextualize setbacks and adjust to misfortune or change and learn or find meaning from these things. So it's not enough to just say, well, I didn't do well with that, and now I'm going to just try harder. It's not okay to say, or it's not resilience, it's perseverance, but it's not resilience unless you say, what did I get out of that? What can I learn from how I approached that, or what went wrong with that, so that I can do it differently? So when we're talking about academics as the context, and we're talking about so much more now than just about that sort of relatively clean process of listening and learning and doing problems. We're talking about a very complex environment now for learning. What we're talking about in resilience is being able to say, what produced that setback? What's the context in which that setback is? And how do I learn from what is happening or has happened? One of the things that's hardest for young people is being able to look beyond an immediate future. And in fact, that's kind of hard for all of us right now, to look beyond the next month or two, because we really don't know what's going to be happening beyond that. It's only that perspective that sort of gives us that material that we need to be able to learn and find meaning. It's only the perspective that we can get from looking back on something that really helps us say, well, now I get what that was about. So right now, if you're not feeling resilient, or you're not feeling like your kids are being resilient, they are probably being tenacious. They are probably having stick-to-itiveness to some degree. They may or may not be resilient because they don't know what to learn yet. They don't know what to learn from the experiences that they're having. So I want to talk a little bit about this model that I've developed, which is the 8 pillars. And I only have about 15 or so minutes to go through them. So this gives you a fair amount of time to ask questions. And certainly you're always free to contact me, and I'm happy to talk more with any of you. So the 8 pillars are someone who uses autonomous skills outside the classroom, and I'll talk a minute about what that means now. Someone who uses autonomous skills inside the classroom. Someone who has the ability to apply a growth mindset. I'll talk about that. Someone who is able to grow their academic resilience. Someone who maintains a sense of belonging, develops a meaningful relationship with technology, works to understand the institution and institutions around them, and accepts support for financial, physical, spiritual, emotional, environmental, and nutritional, and all kinds of other needs. So I want to talk just for a moment about the distinction between a classroom and a home classroom, because those lines blur. First of all, your child may be in school 6-7 hours a day, but not every minute of those 6 or 7 hours is learning hours. There's time between classes. There's time where you're getting settled in the classroom. There's time where you're packing up your books. So don't expect your kid to be focused on task for 6 hours or even 2 hours. If possible, in your home, create a separate physical space for them to be doing their work. Bedroom, if that's all they have, that's great, but not in bed. If they can sit in a corner, put a box in front of them. You can't see, but that's what I have right now in front of me, is a box with my laptop on it. Bed is for sleep and should be maintained for that. Otherwise, it can really start to, it can impact how readily your student is able to fall asleep. So really try and separate bed and bedroom, if possible, from workspace. Use time as a structure, use a grid, use a Google Calendar to set up, this is what a day looks like, and this is what, during a school day, it's supposed to look like. After the webinar, Charlene will share a beautiful link that has some suggestions on how to structure that time. But do expect shorter attention span and a need for more intermittent rewards. For the students to be adjusting to, oh, this is the place where I let my hair hang down, and now it's also the place where I'm in my student persona. It's a difficult transition. So expecting them to need a little bit more of their home environment to be folded into the school environment is natural. Finally, recruit your students to problem solve. Ask them, what is it that you need? What can I help you do? Or what do you feel like would be helpful for this in making it more satisfying and productive for you? Trust yourself that you have raised great kids and that when your expectations of them go up, their capacities also go up. So recruit them in the process of getting help in solving this new problem that no one has ever solved. So I'll quickly talk about these skills. Autonomous skills outside the classroom, which is now in the living room or in the corner of the bedroom. Managing time, planning time, reading strategies, writing strategies, preparing for exams, and really preparing for learning in general. And the skills that students are also employing are things like skills in managing procrastination, skills in managing perfectionism, and also motivational issues. These are really sort of at the top of the list right now for the challenges that are facing students. I guess my overarching advice on this is be kind and gentle to yourself and to your students in what is expected of them compared to their former selves. I know a lot of you are probably seeing, this isn't how my student usually interacts with their schoolwork or feels about school or interacts with me. This is a whole new ballgame. And so all the things that they may have employed in the past are probably going to need to change. The skills that they're using when they're learning really have to do with listening, looking, watching, speaking, that's a dog barking, and believe it or not, sitting, which is a skill. And having the ability to sit for a length of time is a skill that can be developed. I think the takeaway that I want to give you about the skills inside and outside the classroom is that now more than ever, connecting the thread of what they're learning and consolidating it after they've taken it in, either through a lecture or through a tape or reading, giving them a chance to kind of debrief it and talk about it or write about it, talk with their friends about it. That's actually a very robust way of learning, is you take information in and then you talk about it. Ideally, we'd have a second hour for this webinar and all of the participants in this would be able to talk, you'd be able to talk with one another and talk about, well, here's what I see and here's what I do and this is how I make sense of it. So allow your kids the opportunity, and if you have the time, be part of that process of like literally, so what'd you learn today and what was interesting and what was that like, and engage them at the level that they're at. I mentioned a growth mindset. A growth mindset is the ability to see intelligence as not something fixed, but rather something that changes with effort and time. Students may right now feel that they're up against overwhelming odds. If you can help them see that they have had the capacity to learn things they didn't think that they could learn, and they have adjusted to things that they didn't think that they could adjust to, as have you. You know, if you have a child who feeds themselves, remember they didn't always know how to do that, and remind them that they didn't always know how to do that very neatly or effectively. We are hardwired to grow. And so that's what a growth mindset is about, is helping people remember that it's in our human nature to develop and to continue to grow. Academic resilience is, I see, as sort of some very specific domains. It really involves risk, and right now that can be just getting up in the morning and facing the day. It has to be something that you care about. And that's one of the things that I think students are really struggling with, is they don't know what to care about right now. Remember that hierarchy of needs. If what you're caring about is health and safety and clean food and clean air and clean water, that's what you care about. Resilience is built on the capacity to fail in something that you've risked and that you care about. You have to have feelings about it. You have to be able to feel what you feel, whether that's disappointment or relief or worry or terror. You feel what you feel about it. There has to be an opportunity to share that experience. You have to find a way to tell the story of what has happened and what is happening to you. And finally, there's that ability to learn from it. And again, I talk about these as if they're like, oh, let's just knock those off. This is, as many people have said, this is a marathon. And so the most that may be happening right now is the feeling of failure or the feelings of feeling, and hopefully some sharing. The learning may not come for a while. Well, how we can make sense of this, or how students can make sense of what they're learning and the ways that they're learning it, may be difficult right now. But just look for opportunities. The fifth pillar is a sense of belonging. And I know for most parents, having their kids limit their connection with social media is a given. Now is actually the time where they need to be connecting with people as much as possible. And knowing and being able to calibrate and gauge their own experiences among their peer group. So I'm not going to say flat out change your rules about social media, but just know that any opportunity within the family for you to share with them, wow, we're all going through this together, or to allow them as teenagers to say, well, I don't know what's happening with my family, but here's what's happening with my friends, and here's how I get a sense of normalcy. That's very valuable for them. A meaningful relationship with technology has changed in the last month. There's a lot more technology in students' lives than ever before, and than we may wish. I think the thing to ask is whether that's a meaningful connection or whether that's an arbitrary one. There's a lot more to say about that. Maybe we'll plan another seminar to talk specifically about how to relate to technology. Another pillar of the resilient learner is understanding the institution. And those are schools, whether they are huge like Oxford, or whether they are tiny like a single room schoolhouse, or whether they are your living room. Understanding the rules is very important to understanding how to function within the system. And right now, the system is in flux. So we're still settling into, well, what are the rules that I establish at home? And what are the rules that the school is establishing? And what are the expectations? And what should I expect? And I guess right now, the 24/7 institution is your family. And that is the one that counts. I know that for many of you, saying, let's break the school's rules isn't an option, or feels like it's way too far outside your comfort zone. But know that whatever it is that's happening in your house and with your kids and in that relationship and in that domain is the one that's really resonating loud. So it might be up to you to say, you know what, I know that you still want to get an A in this class, and it's really painful to think about switching to a pass-fail instead of a grade because you've earned that and you've worked so hard. But we're just going to try and take the long view, and we don't know what this means yet, but let's try and have a good day today and eat well and sleep well and care about each other. Which brings me to the final pillar, which is really about supporting all of the ways that your student is a human being in their emotional, spiritual, physical, environmental, and nutritional needs, and many, many others. It's so important right now that you get to see your kid as a whole person, not just as a student when they're at school, because now school's at home, or a person when they're around you because school's over there. Students are people, and students everywhere. And until they are not in a structured institution, they don't get to decide where they take whatever baggage they have to whatever domain they have. So if what's happening right now is, your student is unable to concentrate because they are so bereft at missing their friends, that's where they're at. And that's not something that you're going to easily rush them past. A lot of people have talked about how this is a time of great grieving. Seniors who are grieving the loss of their senior years that they've worked so hard for, grieving of normalcy, grieving of lost opportunities, and grieving of certainty. It's not something that it's not going to be done tomorrow, and so it's a process that we're all going through. And I think since your home environment is the one that you're all in and stuck with each other, if your priority can be being loving parents to your kids. That's where to go. So we are at 12:30. I know that there are probably several questions, so I'm going to stop my share, if I can figure that out. Don't know. Nope. I don't know how to stop my share.
Okay, that's okay. Then we'll ask questions this way, Adina.
Okay.
So some of you may have to hop off. We understand that you've got kids at home and we won't call it homeschooling, but distance learning to take care of. But we do have a few questions from the audience and a few that I'd like to pose to her. So if you can stay with us. I know you're also at home, but let's join in giving a big hand to Adina wherever you are. Thank you for the wonderful advice. It's really true. We're all in this together and we don't know yet what the learning will be. And I think it's important to talk with your kids about that it's all uncertain. There's something called anticipatory grief, which is really a sadness about what is to come that we don't know. So that's another thing to talk about with your children, because this is it's an unknown for all of us. And the more that you can do to just provide your kids with the love and support that you can, the better we'll all be. And thank you, Adina, for adapting your 8 pillars to distance learning. I think we all learned a lot today that will be helpful. All right, let's start with an easy one. My teen gets overwhelmed with new assignments. They get really upset and tell me it's too hard and they don't know what to do. How can I help without either getting drawn into an argument or into doing their work?
I think the way that I would respond to that is to start with, where is your teen in the moment when you're having this discussion? Is it the middle of the night or is it daylight? How well rested or well fed are they? Again, we're at the bottom of Maslow's needs. Where are they as a human being in the moment? And I wouldn't have discussions like this late at night. I wouldn't have it when my kid is hungry. I would make sure and bring to that a question: what do you feel would be most helpful to you? And that's a lot of decision making for a student, and they may say, I don't know, but I don't want to take any advice. In which case I would just say, well, show me whatever you want to show me, and I'll see what I can do to help.
Okay, thank you.
Question, but.
Adina, we have a request here from one of our participants. If you could put back up the slide with the 8 pillars, do you think that's something you could do?
Yes, I'll go all the way back.
Okay, thank you. And again, we will send, this video will be available for viewing later. Okay, thank you, Adina. While that's loading, I will line up the next question. This is a good one. What suggestions do you have for parents who struggle with developing structure in their home before COVID-19 and are now placing even more responsibility on professionals other than themselves with at-home learning?
Mm-hmm. Structure is about, I think in this instance, about decision making. Structure is there anyway. Every hour is a structure, every chunk of time is a structure. And so I think the place to start is to go to either a paper or a virtual calendar like Google or iCal, and start to look at the way those tools are structured and begin to build out, okay, well, here's 24 hours, you're not awake for all of those. Where are you sleeping? Where are you eating? Where are the external expectations? When is laundry day? And start to fill in a calendar that describes life as you know it right now. And from there, begin to build in small pieces of time that say, here's, if the school is not actually holding online classes, but is simply just dishing out assignments, here's when you're going to work on this assignment. Here's when you're going to work on this assignment. This is when this one is going to happen. And begin to build, with a light touch, a structure for a day, one piece at a time. But I would start with those Maslow bottom needs. When are you sleeping? When are you eating? When are you getting your laundry done? when are the chores happening? When are you walking the dog? And build from there.
Okay, good advice. Thank you. All right, here's a question that I know everybody is thinking about, especially now with remote learning. Procrastination with schoolwork is a common problem for students working at home. How can we support our students without placing too much stress on them?
Yeah, that's a great question. It's a very delicate dance. You know, it really requires, procrastination as a challenge is usually very closely related to motivation. I love going to the movies. I never get there late. I don't put that off because I'm really invested in it. Things that I'm more motivated for, I make happen. And things that I'm less motivated for, it's harder to, cleaning my bathroom, I put that off a lot. When you start to find the personal relevance, oh, I get a sense of satisfaction looking at my clean bathroom. Or, oh, I like not having the pressure that something's hanging over my head. Or, I really care about, poverty and social equity. And I see how this may be kind of related to that. Whatever you can find that helps motivate your student to connect that to the work that they're doing is golden. The problem right now is that it's very difficult to really identify what motivates us when we're at the bottom of that hierarchy of needs. So right now, it may be, I'm just going to check in with my schoolwork once a day, and I'm only going to get a half an hour done because that's as much as I can bear. Or I'm only going to, I'm going to focus this week on getting onto a regular sleep schedule and getting up before 8 o'clock in the morning every day. You have to really work with your kids. What motivates them may be the reward that they get at the end of it that's not intrinsic value to you. It may be they get to, have a second, dessert that you're going to make, or they may get to, watch that show that you've been telling them that there's no time for them to watch. Find out what motivates them, whether it's about school or just about anything. Motivation can help with procrastination.
Okay, thank you. Good answer. All right, here's another one that I know everybody is thinking a lot about as we are sheltering in place. My teen is spending a lot of time on the computer to prepare assignments, but he gets distracted by social media and games. He's failed 2 assignments, but he still is shocked and crushed that his teacher is being so mean, so hard on him. How do I help him be resilient to recover?
One thing that can be really useful is helping students collect data about themselves. So posing them the challenge of reflecting on what they're doing and how they're doing it so that they can see the repercussions of decisions they didn't even realize that they were making. If you have a student who actually cares about having failed something or not done well with something, that is the opening to, well, you don't want to feel like that again. So give them a chance to say, well, walk through that process of how you worked on that assignment. Did you have your notifications on your phone on? Were there pop-ups coming onto your screen? Because we know that every time your attention shifts, you're losing momentum. So if you were interrupted 15 times in a half an hour, all that stuff matters, but if you consolidated it and worked for a half hour and then spent 10 minutes looking at those notifications afterwards, you get more out of that half hour. But they don't know that if they're not asked to look back on what those things are. Very, very helpful is to invite them to write a work journal, like a work journal, where you have an empty grid and they say every couple of hours, what have I been doing? What have I been doing? Every few hours. Well, I kind of dozed off for an hour, that's fine. And then I did some work and that was really only about 20 minutes. And then I got involved in this other thing and I started watching this YouTube series and that was 20 minutes and then 40 minutes. Ask them to, for about 2 or 3 days, do a work journal so that they can start to see where their time is going and where it's being spent.
Really good point. And I remember, Adina, from your last talk that having kids review their notes and review what they've learned is actually the best way to consolidate learning. It kind of goes against their natural tendencies, but it actually is a great learning tool. So it is 12:45, and I want to honor everybody's time commitment and say a huge thank you to Adina for all of your insights and information today. I think it's really wonderful that you have done this, and I love that you said that you feel that it's a real privilege to talk with and share with parents. So we wish we could be there in person with all of you. We will again soon. I will be sending out a follow-up email tomorrow with links that Adina mentioned, and we will have this recording ready for you. Our videography students at the Boys and Girls Club, bless their hearts, are still working remotely, and so they'll be helping us prepare this video and get it ready as soon as we can. So again, let's say a great big thank you, and I look forward to seeing you all on Thursday for Dr. Devorah Heitner. We're going to be talking about screen time, unplugging, and well-being. So again, take care, everybody, stay well, and we hope to see you again soon. Thank you.